I'm Amos Elroy, and you're listening to the Progressive Update. I wanted to talk a little about a problem that's not very well published in the US, and that is the refugees, the asylum seekers that have made it to the border and were turned around based on the agreement that Trump has signed with Obrador, the Mexican president. Mexico has agreed to keep those asylum seekers until they are processed. Uh, Not long ago, about a couple of months ago, a group of 1,700 asylum seekers have reached the border and turned around. And since then, they've been placed in a detention facility called Mejia Dora, that's in a little town in North Mexico called Piedras Negras. So these people are kept basically in a emptied factory, little heat and very, very rough conditions. The people there are not allowed to leave. They're detained. It's basically a prison. And remember, those are asylum seekers. Those are people who were traumatized, people who, for example, their daughter was raped and a gang burned their house. People like that, basically from Honduras and Colombia and other locations that have made it through Mexico and are attempting to basically create a new life for themselves. And those people are just imprisoned there. In a minute, we'll hear the testimony of a little girl that a group called Races, which is an organization that's devoted to this issue, has recorded right outside the facility. They're not letting anyone out of the building. You have to have papers to get out of the building. You can't go far, though. It's within the compound, but people were able to approach the fence and record the little girl. This little girl is 10 years old, so mind you, in comparison, Anne Frank was 13 years old when she started to write her diary. So let's listen.
Me llamo Ana y tengo 10 años. De Honduras soy. ¿Qué está pasando acá? Yo quiero que ellos escuchen lo que voy a decir ahorita. Que no quiero estar acá.
My name is Ana. I'm 10 years old. I am from Honduras. What is happening here? Well, I want everyone to listen to what I am going to say right now. I do not want to be...
Que lo saquen porque acá es muy feo y no me gusta. Muy encerrado, muchas enfermedades, entonces...
They need to let us out of here because it's really ugly. I don't like it. It is very confined and there are a lot of diseases. The doctors don't pay attention to us, nothing. We came to the doctor yesterday and they told us there were no pills. There are no pills every day. For my mom, there are never any pills. That's why my mom gets angry. They don't let us go outside. If we don't go out with a piece of paper, the visa, they won't let us out. We want to go out to this convenience store in front, but we can't. We can't sleep very well because they don't turn the lights off. Yesterday I went to bed at 1 a.m. My mom is sick and they don't let us sleep and there is so much noise there. That's why my mom doesn't want to be here. It really breaks your heart to hear that kind of testimony and to imagine that there's countless others that we don't have any information about, don't hear about, don't see. Out of the 1,700 detained, 433 are children. And this is the emergency at our southern border, not the wall or the problem that Hispanics are trying to invade our country. Those are people who have lost their homes, their families are in danger, they're running away from gangs, they're running away from frustration with no jobs or abject poverty, hunger. And we're treating them like they're some criminals. I'm not sure what Mexico is getting in return for that, but I'm pretty sure that some of the money that is allocated to the border security, in double quotes, is provided to have Mexico detain those people and keep it quiet. And that's a shame. I think all of us have to do whatever we can to publicize this issue and bring it to the forefront of awareness. Because unless we do, these people can be there for months, years, who knows? And the situation is only going to get worse. Another topic I wanted to discuss today is the Amazon cancellation of the New York headquarters. It seems like MSNBC and the rest of the media have concluded that this is a disastrous outcome. I'm not so sure about that, but let's look at the reasons why a lot of people were kind of objecting to the Amazon deal. That's a deal that was brokered behind closed doors by the governor of New York and the mayor of New York. And they offered about $3 billion in tax returns to Amazon. Now, Amazon claimed that they would create about 25,000 jobs, but it's not clear in which categories, how much of it would be higher paid jobs and how much of it would be like warehouses and so forth. The objections were generally, on one count, related to Amazon's union busting policies, and that's been really a source of trouble for a lot of people. The other point was that Amazon has recently, as recently as October of 2018, been trying to get ICE interested in their system of facial recognitions. So, facial recognition technology is kind of a new area that Amazon is trying to get into. And it gives a lot of people a concern about privacy and so forth. So those are principled ideas. And basically, the idea of a lot of people is if somebody offers you jobs, you should just lay down quietly and accept it and say thank you. But that was not the case in New York, and Amazon has tried to lobby and had a campaign sending people mailers trying to get people to call the representatives. Very few people call the representatives, which is why this campaign failed, and ultimately they just decided to pull the plug on it. It would be probably a good idea if other locales could resist the offer without having Amazon step back for some of these really scary or destructive policies. I think unionizing is an important thing for the protection of employees, and we're not talking about every category of employees, but in some cases it is vital. And Amazon has used the fact that they've resisted unions to abuse their powers. It's known that in some of the warehouses where temperatures could climb pretty high, rather than installing an AC, they've added a couple of ambulances to be parked right outside the facility to be able to grab employees who faint from the heat and take them straight to the hospital. And that kind of abuses have no means, there's no means to address those things unless there are unions that fight for the rights of employees. So the other thing that I would like to say is in almost all cases where an industry comes in with thousands of jobs and becomes the center of a community, it is generally a bad thing for the long term. And the reason is that eventually the industry will fail or be surpassed by some other company or industry. And once that happens, the entire community crashes. And that's been true of Michigan, of other areas, coal in Pennsylvania, and so forth. And it leaves carcasses of communities behind. It is much better if New York manages to perhaps give incentives to smaller companies, maybe not the tiniest, but smaller than Amazon, to come into the area and have more diverse collection of companies rather than one monolithic employer. Trust me, Amazon does not need that boost. They made $11 billion last year, and how much tax do you think they paid? Well, actually, negative 129 million. That is a federal tax income rebate. Our next topic is extinction. With me today is Chris Lund, the natural progressive from the YouTube fame. I'd like to have a discussion with her about the new revelations that came out from certain research projects that were concluded regarding insect extinction. Hi, Chris.
Hello, Amos. How are you?
Good, good. So, so tell us about what you learned.
Okay, well, as you know, I'm pretty intensely focused on climate change and the problems that are resulting from that. And in my research, I came across a research paper that's pretty shocking. And it has to do with the insect apocalypse that finally is now being put onto regular corporate media. So glad to hear they're finally getting on board with what's happening. A little late, but better late than never. So the paper I read across, the title is Co-Extinctions Annihilate Planetary Life During Extreme Environmental Change. So basically what that means is once you lose one species, you're bound to start a chain reaction, a domino effect, that you'll end up losing several species because of that one species. And then it just keeps going on and on and on from there. So this is really, really scary, especially with all the news about the insect apocalypse, where they're seeing huge reductions in insect populations, especially in areas like the tropical rainforests of Puerto Rico. There was I believe it was 90% of the insects, this is just going off of memory, were lost on the rainforest floor, and over 80% up in the canopy, which is a drastic reduction and really frightening. And the researchers,
sounds pretty awful.
Yeah, the researchers that went into that rainforest had been there before, but when they went there this last time, he said it was eerie. You couldn't even hear birds. So that's just terrifying. And it has to do with the warming temperatures and the reduction in habitat for the insects.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that also pollutants such as insecticides are...
Oh, yes. Yeah, the more intensely they farm and the more intensely they use the pesticides and all that. Yeah, that's really affecting the insect population, especially the ones that pollinate both wild plants and our farm plants. So we could have food shortages just because of that portion, not to mention the fish, the birds, the reptiles that also depend on the insects to eat. So it's a chain reaction, and the insects are just the first part of this whole scenario.
Mm-hmm. So what's the projection? What are they projecting going forward?
Well, the extinction rate is 8 times faster in the insects than it is for vertebrates right now, mammals, birds, and reptiles. Insects will go extinct without severe changes within a few decades, so like within 30 years. And if the insects go extinct, we all do. So
yeah, that's a pretty frightening thought. And I understand that the it's not just one research that was done, right?
Oh no, there has been several, too many to even mention, and there's a lot of them that are getting together and putting their information all together, and it just keeps getting more and more scary for sure. But the habitat loss and loss of pollination and the intensive agricultural practices we're not going to change that anytime soon, unfortunately. And that's what we'd have to do to turn this around at all, or have any hope of turning it around.
Yeah, I remember when we were talking about just the bees and like the projections of what would happen if the bees went were just terrifying. We'd lose bananas, we'd lose a lot of vegetables and fruit that are pollinated normally by bees, and this is just a part of the picture. If indeed 40% of the insects are going to vanish, 40% of the species, I can't imagine it not having tremendous effect on not just what our environment's going to look like, but our
food sources will be gone. I mean, the fish that depend on insects to eat. People eat a lot of fish, and if they don't have food, then we don't have that food resource. It all comes down to food resources, and it's not just the bees that pollinate plants. There are other insects that also pollinate plants. So we can't just hyper focus on one species.
No, of course.
Yeah, butterflies are particularly susceptible to this problem. The monarch butterfly in California during the migration was down 80% this season. So it's showing up everywhere. And Germany has, I think I already said, Germany has a huge decline in insect population. You can't even find any on your windshield anymore, according to reports. And it's just sad. It's just really, really sad that it has to get to this point before anything is done. 80% of the wild plants, 80% of the wild plants depend on the insects for pollination.
Yeah, our world's going to look very, very different. And
right. The wild plants that other mammals depend on to eat, deer, rabbits, anything like that eats plants, all the herbivores, they're going to go too.
It's not surprising that an anecdotal thing you mentioned, the researcher that mentioned that he couldn't hear any birds. That's not surprising. They would feed on insects in great part. So that would we're going to see many fewer types of birds.
Yeah, and when their food source is gone, they're gone, and when our food source is gone, we're gone. It is going to be a chain reaction. It will affect humans. We may not be feeling it right now, but we sure will feel it when our food starts to go away.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that some of the research that was collated by I think it was Sydney University and in Beijing, and they basically looked at all the existing research that's been done, and most of it has been actually conducted in temperate parts of the world, like the North America and Europe.
Yeah.
Not so much other parts of the world. So we don't know really how bad the situation is, but it's likely to be worse even in tropical areas.
Yes, exactly. In tropical areas, the insects aren't as adaptable to the higher temperatures as they are in North America, because they're used to the changing temperatures here where they're not there. They've adapted to it.
So do researchers also point to any solutions or any suggestions, or are they just ringing the alarm bell?
I haven't seen a whole lot of suggestions other than stopping the destruction of their habitats and reducing pollutants and pesticides. I mean, that's asking a lot of our consumer focused society. They're not going to want to take less of a profit if they can't use insecticides and their crops aren't as good temporarily, you know.
Well, beyond that, it's like it is an existential problem in terms of food production, because if we can't rely on some of these crutches that we've learned to rely on, how are we going to meet the production rates that we need in order to feed the population? So that's a huge problem.
Yeah, we can't with the centralized agriculture that we have, where they're just working on like one farm plants one crop and that's all they specialize in. We don't have diversity in crops like we actually need to have, and we need it more local to be sustainable. We need more family farms and less industrial farms. So that would also help out the situation if we could get more centered on growing our own food and just getting food more locally instead of by big manufacturers of food like the big chicken plants and the feedlots and all that. So yeah, we need to definitely get off of that train and get on to being more self-sustaining in our own local communities. That would help a lot.
Right. And I think that the worst part of it is that it's not just the danger of extinction, but it's the danger of just losing the balance and like complete spiraling out of control. We have no idea how certain things will affect other things. Like, for example, I understand that the wasps are some of the most endangered right now. And if we lose the wasps, they're predators of a lot of other insects that could completely change our ecology in other ways. So that by itself is not even just focusing on extinction, but focusing on that kind of like complete unpredictability of our ecology.
Yeah, and then there's the flies and the cockroaches that seem to right now they can thrive in the situation because all of their competition is gone. So I've heard that they can actually get kind of overwhelming because of this situation. I mean, it's all temporary. I mean, one loss could lead to another species thriving for a while.
Yeah.
And then it will ultimately, overconsume itself, so to speak, like humans have done. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time.
That's pretty awful. Well, I guess we'll have to hope for the best and do our part and see where things go. It's definitely not optimistic.
Yeah, it is definitely not optimistic, but getting the word out, getting people to open their eyes to what's going on and to hopefully save some ecosystems. It's not looking good right now, honestly. It's just not looking good, but it's all we can do.
All right, Chris. Thank you very much for joining me, and we'll talk some more in the future.
All right, thank you, Amos.
And this brings me to the last topic of our week. So, the topic is the impotence of our president. I know some of you are giggling, but I mean it in the sense of his inability or incapability to conduct his own agenda. Well, if you remember, he swept into office with his promise to drain the swamp. That was a great promise to his supporters. And indeed, after he resumed power, he passed an executive order that required lobbyists to have 5 years of pause after they have left an official position before they could lobby. Well, that's something that I supported and commended him on. And likewise, he's passed in the same order requirement that people who move from lobbying to an official position in the administration, that they would not be able to make decisions on issues that they have been involved in lobbying for actively prior to that. Well, recently, about 35 officials from the administration who have left the administration, according to ProPublica, have sidestepped those bans, and nothing really happened to them. The latest is a high-profile one. It's someone who left in disgrace after a major ethics issue, and that's Ryan Zinke. He joined a company called Turnberry Solutions, which is a lobbying company. So really, this is like a FU to Trump and his executive order. And I don't think he has to focus on the wall as something that kind of is an affront to his power, but rather to the closest people to his administration. Really, the center, the core of his own administration is flipping him the bird. There's a guy called Bernhard who was just appointed to fill Ryan Zinke's place in the energy department. And this guy came straight from the oil and gas lobbying industry. According to the ban, he's not supposed to make any decisions in any issues that are relating to any of those that he lobbied on. So he would not be able to make any decisions relating to oil and gas drilling in Alaska, endangered species rollbacks, protection rollbacks, that is, or the coal industry. Of course, he's not confining himself to any of those restrictions. So there's really two possibilities. Either Trump passed this executive order just to appease his base and never meant it to go anywhere or be taken seriously. And all of this is really being done with his blessing. Or he's an impotent president, which I tend to believe more. I don't think in this case he was disingenuous about his wish to rid the government of that type of corruption, but I don't think he has any teeth. Nobody cares. They're just doing what they want to do and carrying on with their business. All right. I am happy that I spent another half hour with you guys. This is the second episode, and I would be happy if you share it with like-minded people. And we'll talk soon. If you want to send me your comments or participate in the discussion, just tweet with the hashtag #ProgressiveUpdate. Cheers.